Around the clock and around the world, at any given moment of time, hundreds of swift airliners are weaving their patterns of peaceful trade and commerce along the invisible highways of the sky.
In the late 1800s, the Playa del Rey wetland area, 12 miles southwest of downtown Los Angeles, was developed as a pleasure resort. And in 1921, the Palisades del Rey Beach Bluff area was developed with a variety of luxury and affordable homes. In 1927, an airport known as Mines Field opened in the former farmlands to the southeast. Playa del Rey and Westchester, both legally part of the city of Los Angeles, generally remained a sleepy community until the beginning of World War II. It was then that Mines Field expanded to become Los Angeles Airport, or LAX, and Howard Hughes moved his booming aircraft company to Westchester, starting a tremendous defense and aerospace expansion. After the war, homes were needed for returning veterans and defense workers, and so a large development of tract homes were built to the north of the airport, further expanding the Playa del Rey and Westchester suburbs.
I lived in Westchester all my life, contrary to what it is now. The whole area down past Dumbarton, as I say, was a big open field, and there were no houses behind ours. So I had this beautiful view.
I actually was born, and my parents built a home that we moved into at the time that I was born.
Because we were in a cul-de-sac, that's kind of the congregating place for all the kids and all the, after school, on the weekends, kids would be riding bikes, we'd be playing, baseball in the street.
It was a wonderful place to live. Beautiful, beautiful neighborhood with rolling hills. It was great for bike riding and beautiful views of the ocean.
I have lots of fond memories. The time when we were seniors, they had the senior luau, and so we decided we'd go over to the airport, which was not much, and greet the passengers coming in from the planes and pretend like they were arriving in Hawaii because we all had this Hawaiian gear on.
It was a wonderful place to grow up. It really was. And there were so many, kids on the block and Westline Avenue and other kids that we knew. And just had a wonderful time knowing them and knowing the parents. And it was a whole different way of life back then.
We'd sandboard the bluffs that go down towards Pershing now. And they've got a lot of ice plant on them now, but it used to be sand. And we would have a group of probably 20 people every day just playing.
All of these planes have one thing in common. They all have to land.
The incredible post-war growth of Los Angeles meant that the airport had to grow as well, and new and longer runways were needed for the commercial jets that were transforming air travel. The airport had to look north to the homes of Westchester, while the noise of jets was starting to rattle the oceanfront homes of the Surfridge neighborhood of southern Playa del Rey.
Well, the airport was way on the other side of Sepulveda, east of Sepulveda. They were propeller planes. So by the time they came over us, they were really, really high, and they weren't that loud. And as time went on, of course, the jet was invented, and it took longer to get up in the air, much more power.
We had to stop class when the planes went over, and we just all waited for the plane to go. And that happened at least a couple of times an hour.
The airport was always there. The only time that it was really a sort of a bothersome was if you were watching TV. And the jets pretty much flew right over our house.
I don't think I have a complete high school education for sure, because we had to stop every 3 minutes for the plane to go overhead before we could go on.
And it was just repeatedly all day long.
Hello there. Welcome to Los Angeles International Airport. I'm the Director of Operations. We're always glad to show off our airport to visitors, and especially to groups of young people like yours. Maybe you aren't using our facilities yet, but someday you will.
Eminent domain is the right established by the Fifth Amendment to the United States Constitution, which states that private property shall not be taken for public use unless just compensation is provided. Beginning in 1961, the City of Los Angeles, as it had already done in other neighborhoods to develop freeways and sports stadiums, declared eminent domain in selected parts of Westchester and Playa del Rey, buying up homes and lands needed for airport development and noise abatement. From 1965 to 1981, these neighborhoods were evacuated, houses and schools were moved or demolished, and the airport continued its expansion.
The airport decided that because of the advent of the jet aircraft, the 707 was one of the first ones, in around 1958 or so, because they were noisier and because they were also polluted quite a bit, smoky, that no one should be in the flight path below their takeoff and landing route.
I was in school, elementary school, and the teacher asked, how many of you are affected by your houses moving for the airport? And I hadn't heard anything. So I really didn't know until talking to friends. Alberstone was one of the first streets that went.
I do remember first it was, they actually had boundaries that they, publicized or announced, and they said they were going to be taking up until, a certain block or a certain area. So we were not initially part of that, but then they kind of kept moving the boundaries.
Thousands of homes in Westchester were destroyed. I mean, I think it's around 4,000 or 5,000 homes.
My friends' parents, by now we had moved on, but they were having to make a choice of, being bought out, or they could move their home to some other location. It was very, very traumatic.
And even when they weren't taking the neighborhood or your home, there were a lot of families that were concerned because, that it just kind of really took the neighborhood apart. So even if their home wasn't taken, they were still kind of thinking about moving because it wasn't the same.
All these houses were disappearing, including the houses of some of our fellow students. And there was, that was the talk of the town. We talked about it because because we knew the kids who lived there who were going to lose their homes. But as students, as teenagers, we didn't really spend a lot of time on it because, well, stuff happens. Until 1967-ish or so, just before I graduated, the word went around the campus and that the homes surrounding St. Bernard, which housed a large majority of students who went to St. Bernard, were on the list.
All the homes that were beginning to, or had been taken, really, really hurt the local economy in terms of the retail business.
They were only getting a little, I think they, what was it, 3% on top of what it was worth or something that the airport was giving them or whatever.
I mean, the home values, of course, you can imagine, really decreased. So your house wasn't worth much if you tried to sell it yourself. So they were just caught in that and then felt powerless to do anything. And we found out later that when they sent an appraiser to appraise the homes, they had told the appraiser to appraise the homes according to the standards in the city of Southgate. And that was a completely different city, value-wise for home prices. So that was difficult.
And Los Angeles owns the airport. And because they are a public agency, they have extraordinary powers, and that includes eminent domain. And the concern was that not only were they going to tear out the homes, they were going to condemn the school because of the noise. And that raised a lot of eyebrows. The diocese got into a major legal battle with the city of Los Angeles to save the school. And as it turned out, they made a settlement. The houses all got torn down.
Diners will be gathering to enjoy a leisurely meal while they watch the tremendous spectacle of sunset time at the airport, which I call the greatest show on earth.
The public benefit required in eminent domain cases continues to unfold in the story of LAX expansion. The spreading of the airport has provided undoubted benefit to the economy and growth of the city of Los Angeles, as millions of tourists, families, and business travelers fly in and out of Los Angeles each year. The airport's ongoing expansion with a new terminal and transport hub helped LA to be awarded its third Olympic Games, scheduled for 2028. The airport tax base funds schools, police, fire department, health, and other community services. Locally, Westchester's city golf course was expanded to 18 holes, and the airport is developing lands acquired in the 1960s and 70s as offices, retail spaces, new parks, and soundproofed apartments. The students at Westchester and St. Bernard High Schools will no longer look out at fenced-off vacant lots, but will once again see a busy part of the city.
It was really, really traumatic, honestly. And I still feel that when I drive by, when I see it all, just empty and still some of the old light posts.
Our street is not accessible anymore to where there's a wall that was built years and years ago from, I guess it was kind of supposed to be somewhat of a boundary, a sound boundary for the airport.
The streets are still there. The streetlights are still there. The homes are all gone and it's all fenced off. But the school's still there because the Archdiocese was able to talk the city of Los Angeles and the FAA into soundproofing the school.
It was mixed. I mean, because it's public use. Obviously, eminent domain has a good point. I mean, our freeways, I'm sure a lot of those people on the homes close to the freeways lost their backyards. And so it is for the good. We understood that, but it was just sad.
When this all first started, a lot of mixed emotions, and I've continued over the years to try to keep a balance on, the expansion of the airport and what that brought in a positive way in terms of jobs, economic development.
And the irony to me is that they tore those streets out, they tore those homes out because they said that the jet planes are too noisy and too smoky, and that's been resolved. Jet planes are so much more quiet than they were back in the 60s. And the pollution's been chopped to small single-digit numbers in comparison to the 60s.
You only hope that as things develop that there is compromise, that there is something given back to the community as redevelopment occurs. And if we don't continue with that growth, we could end up being a slum.